So good morning. As I was thinking about what I would be talking about today, I decided I would tell you a story. The story is about my mother. My mother and I had gotten into a heated conversation growing up about my education. The conversation regarded how I would be using assistive technology in my education, whether or not it was beneficial. So, with that in mind, I want to open with a quote by Charles Dickens from his book Bleak House. This was written around 1853, and I think it still applies today. To quote Dickens, he says that it is a melancholy truth that even great men have their poor relations. How does that idea of poor relations relate to what we've been talking about? How does it relate to language? I think that could be applied to language. The second class that our cohort took here at Drake University was a philosophy class taught by Dr. Hayden. He told us the importance of defining the terms in order to win the argument. So that's what I want to do this morning in this discussion. What does technology mean? I'm going to share with you my personal definition of technology. Technology is a system used to create more fluidity, more efficiency. It can be complex, such as language is complex, but it doesn't have to be material or complex. Before I get into more detail, I want to give you guys a little bit of brain science, beginning with the neocortex. This is the upper level of our human reasoning, the highest level of our brain, how we're able to cognitively make sense of the world. A little deeper in, we find our limbic system. The limbic portion of our brain deals with our emotions, how we feel love. And finally, our reptilian brain, the third layer. This controls our most basic human functions, such as breath, a heartbeat. Also, in the reptilian portion of the brain, that's where we get our basic self-control for systems such as OCD, for our fight or flight tendencies. Our fear comes from the reptilian brain. Take a look at this image. If we were to see this group of people, many people might ask the same question. They might say, oh, what are these people looking at? But if you were looking at a group of people that looked like this, our reptilian brain instantly kicks in. We're taken aback by their appearance and we start to question, what does it mean to be normal? My definition of normal is breaking expectations. This defies expectation. Some of you might be familiar with William Stryker. He's a politician in the X-Men series. He was the first one to say officially that the mutant population is subhuman. He defined those terms. In the series, mutant children must be registered. Parents are required by the government to register their children in order to follow a tracking system that occurs throughout the series. This is comparable to the deaf population today. From the moment they're born, other than when they're initially given a name, they're immediately identified as having failed at something. They're identified as a failure because one of the first things that they experience in the world is a failed screening test, a hearing screening. Now this has become part of their identity from a young age. From that moment on, the government or the systems, the powers that be, take over the right to their education. They take over their identification, their screening, their tracking. And all because they're breaking a norm or an expectation of what should be normal. Let's define language. What does language mean? Language has to do, at its very root, with the tongue. It comes from a Latin root meaning literally tongue. This creates an expectation that people who don't use their tongue to communicate, could they possibly be subhuman? Does this subjugate other languages, other forms of communication? The very fact that I'm communicating with you all right now, using interpreters to translate my American Sign Language into spoken English, is proof that I'm human as well. It means that there is something very innately wrong with our definition of language and that there could be another perspective. In thinking about deaf children, we have tried to accommodate and to assess and alter their abilities and their skills. Many of their brains have never been able to hear sound before, but we still try to make them use spoken language. How does this apply to the way that we look at technology and its interaction with the brain? Here you see a picture of the iPhone 7. Now this is just business sense. This is a smart company we're looking at right here. We have a capitalist society in America today, and they've now developed a way to make these headphone jacks wireless. And this will be an extremely financially smart decision, so we have to buy this new technology. We are completely obsessed with the idea of sound. We have to hear the baby cry. We have to hear, the water, the sounds of nature. While this is good, how does this apply in my world? We rely so much on our audiological sense that we forget the rest of our body. We forget our other needs as humans. In being obsessed with the single sense, we lose the others. So society today, we see them losing their minds over these kinds of technologies. What makes me lose my mind is when I don't see people thinking with their neocortex. I'm not blind, I'm deaf, but if I go to a restaurant, I still get handed a menu in Braille. That makes me crazy. But again, it goes back to this idea of language, defining our terms, the importance of language, having access to language. Just because I don't have access to language, well, without that, I can't have any access to the technology that's available. No one is deaf except the person who is not willing to hear. No one can see. No one is blind except the person who's not willing to see. As a deaf person, my ears become my eyes. My ears are used, rather by my ears, they're used by my eyes. My hands become my tongue, and my heart is how I hear. When we see and understand that, our language will change. And if we change our language, it means our technology will change as well. I will finally see you. Thank you.